Ladies and gentlemen, members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen, members of the delegation of the Republic of Indonesia, ladies and gentlemen, I declare open the 611th meeting of the Committee for the Protection of the Rights of All Migrant Workers and Members of their Family. The committee will now review item 5 of the agenda. Review of reports presented by states parties under Article 73 of the Convention. Today, we will begin the review of the second periodic report of Indonesia. Allow me, first, on behalf of all members of the committee, and on my own behalf, to extend a warm welcome to His Excellency, the Ambassador Sidarto Reza Suryodipuro, Permanent Representative of the Republic of Indonesia to the United Nations Office at Geneva, Head of Delegation. I'd also like to welcome Mr. Rinaldi Rusman, Director General for Protection from the Ministry of Protection of Indonesian Migrant Workers and co-head of the delegation, as well as the rest of the members of the delegation of the Republic of Indonesia present today at Pali Wilson. I'd like to take this opportunity to express our sincere thanks to the Indonesian government for having agreed to be reviewed by the committee in person. This is a clear demonstration of the states parties' support to the treaty body system as a whole and to the Committee for the Protection of the Rights of Migrant Workers in particular. I have the honor and the pleasure of giving the floor to His Excellency, the Ambassador Sidarto Reza Suryodipuro, Head of Delegation, to introduce the report. Your Excellency, you have the floor, and you can also take this opportunity to introduce the members of your delegation.
Merci beaucoup, Madame
Thank you, Madam Fatimana, Chairperson.
Members of the committee, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, and HRI and CSO representatives and colleagues. A very good morning. It is my great honor to address you today during the review of the second periodic report of the Republic of Indonesia as a state party to the International Convention on the Protection of the Rights of All Migrant Workers and Members of their Families. On behalf of the government of the Republic, members of the committee, allow me also to acknowledge the presence of the representatives of national human rights institutions, civil society organizations, and other stakeholders in today's dialogue. I'm delighted to introduce the Indonesian delegation led by Director General of Protection of the Ministry of the Indonesian Migrant Workers Protection, Mr. Rinaldi Rusman. We comprise representatives from various agencies, including the Coordinating Ministry of Law, Human Rights, Immigration and Correction Affairs, Ministry of the Indonesian Migrant Workers Protection, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Human Rights, Ministry of Immigration and Correction Affairs, and of course, Permanent Mission of Indonesia to the United Nations in Geneva. Madam Chairperson, distinguished members of the committee, for Indonesia, this dialogue is more than a formal obligation. It is an important part of our commitment to protect migrant workers and a catalyst for tangible progress. We are here to assess progress and address remaining challenges, while reaffirming our pledge to remain present and accountable for the protection of migrant workers wherever they are. Indonesia has also carefully considered submissions from and directly engaged with national human rights institutions and CSOs. They provide critical perspective that inform our ongoing efforts to improve policies and implementation mechanisms. Since ratifying the convention, Indonesia has treated the protection of migrant workers as integral to national development anchoring related priorities in the Astacita and National Medium-Term Development Plan 2025-2029. We are committed to ensuring that our citizens working abroad are duly protected, while equally upholding the rights of all migrant workers within our territory. Now, allow me to invite Mr. Rinaldi Rusman, the DG of the Protection from the Ministry of the Indonesian Migrant Workers Protection, to highlight our progress and challenges in ensuring the promotion and protections of the rights of all migrant workers and members of all their families. And then thank you. I give the floor to Mr. Rinaldi. You have it, please.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Madam Chairperson, distinguished members, we are pleased to report significant strides in aligning our national framework within the Convention principles. The enactment and implementation of Law Number 18 of 2017 on the protection of Indonesian migrant workers has been a transformative milestone, establishing a comprehensive approach on protection from pre-departure during the employment abroad to post-return and reintegration. Our commitment is sustained by concrete action and resource allocation. In a clear demonstration of political will, we have elevated the former agency into the Ministry of Protection of Indonesia's migrant workers to consolidate fragmented mandates, strengthen institutional coordination, and accountability related to migrant worker protection. This reform clarifies roles and improves service delivery by resolving long-standing overlap. As the ministry now functions both as a regulator responsible for policy setting, standard formulation, and coordination mechanism, and as an operator providing direct protection services to migrant workers and their families. Its establishment reflects Indonesia's strong political commitment to put migrant worker protection at the forefront of national priorities. This institutional strengthening is coupled with a consistent and significant increase in national budget allocation, which has risen from 260 billion Indonesian rupiah in 2020 to over 687 billion Indonesian rupiah in 2025, dedicated solely to migrant worker protection and empowerment programs. In line with our national priorities, we wish to highlight several points of our current and future action. In ensuring safe, orderly, and regular migration, we have robust government-supervised recruitment procedure through an integrated system, or what we call a Cisco P2MI. In 2025 alone, our efforts have successfully prevented 5,913 individuals from attempting to migrate through irregular channels. We prioritize enhancing bilateral cooperation through bilateral labor agreements that emit protection principles, such as the zero-cost placement and one-channel system in our agreement with Malaysia. We are confronting emerging challenges head-on, including the score of online scam operation. Our cyber trafficking response team has identified and repatriated 1,324 victims from Cambodia, Myanmar, and Laos since 2024. The National Action Plan for Combating Trafficking in Person guides our coordinated law enforcement and victim report effort. In guaranteeing access to justice and compliance mechanism, we have received and resolved 81.7% of 20,675 complaints through various accessible channels, including a national call center and WhatsApp services during the period of 2017 to March 2025. Recognizing the profound psychological impact of exploitation, we are expanding the network of regional psychologists across key provinces of origin to ensure accessible community-based trauma counseling and psychosocial support. To enhance consular assistance, we are actively expanding our mandatory consular notification agreements with a target of adding 15 new partner countries by 2027, ensuring timely intervention for our citizens in distress. Madam Chair and distinguished member, as stipulated in the Convention, Indonesia is committed to ensuring dignity and fairness for migrant workers. Indonesian citizens receive state protection irrespective of their migration status. And foreign migrant workers in Indonesia are protected in accordance with national regulation of Indonesian migrant workers seeking assistance are irregular migrants. This underscores serious risks, such as unfair treatment, violence, poor working conditions, exploitation and trafficking, and the need for comprehensive measures. While regular pathways remain essential for ensuring safe and regular migration, the government ensures that all migrant workers will receive protection without discrimination. However, we acknowledge the critical gaps in our data system, particularly the lack of specific, disaggregated data on undocumented migrant workers and their families who have been deported, as well as on unaccompanied migrant children. We commit to establishing a centralized, comprehensive database that tracks all aspects of the Convention. While we promote migration as a primary safeguard, we are critically reviewing our approach to irregular migration, including the provision of Law No. 6 of 2011 on immigration portal for Ministry of Migrant Worker Protection system, as already mentioned before, immigration database and national identification database, which improves case monitoring, data accuracy, and response coordination. The system allows the government to receive, verify, and adhere that the existence of mechanism is not enough. Our effort to systematically evaluate the outcome of this compliance, including rate of case resolution and victim satisfaction. Indonesia continues to effort to secure better welfare outcome for migrant workers abroad. The most recent achievement is the wage increase for Indonesian domestic migrant workers in Taiwan of several years ago, which improved workers' livelihoods. Indonesia continues to demonstrate its commitment to achieving concrete results through bilateral cooperation. At present, Indonesia maintains bilateral consular consultation forums, strengthening the role of its overseas mission to further provide, among others, a rapid response mechanism, legal assistance, shelter facilities, monitoring visits, and engagement with local authorities and civil society partners. Currently, there are 29 missions that have to ensure that protection standards are met for of children of migrant workers. As a sample, in Sabah and Sarawak, Malaysia, Indonesia worked with relevant local authorities to ensure implementation. Reportedly, 275 CLCs operating in Sabah and Sarawak, Malaysia regions, serving 27,197 students to education, another key area. Sourcing assistance has also expanded to benefit returning migrant workers and their families, which have already benefited hundreds of individuals. Reintegration is viewed not as a single event, but as a long-term process through data on sustainable. The government of Indonesia acknowledges that the challenges before us remain significant. Our data collection, regular migration continues to be driven by complex factors, often involving organized networks that expose people to exploitation, trafficking, and unsafe working environment. The risk of violence against women migrant workers and their families, especially in the kafala system, as some Gulf countries, still occurs in various forms and demands enhanced measures. The capacity of local government to deliver migration services remains uneven. differences in capacity, resources, and we would like also between countries of origin, transit, and destination. We tirelessly reiterate our call for enhanced international cooperation for more countries to ratify this crucial convention, and for a collective effort to address the root causes of migration, such as poverty and inequality. We approach this dialogue with openness and a learning mindset. We acknowledge the challenges that persist, such as the need to further strengthen reintegration program, enhance data disaggregation, eradicate illegal recruitment practices, and adapt to evolving nature of transnational crime like cyber-facilitated trafficking. Indonesia remains firmly committed to standing by its citizens overseas, regardless of their migration path. Protecting Indonesian migrant workers is not only a measure of governmental performance. It is an expression of the state's moral responsibility to each people. The same moral responsibility extends to all migrant workers in Indonesia, and we are dedicated to fulfilling our obligation under the Convention for All. We are ready to discuss further with the committee through this dialogue. Our presence here today is a testament to our commitment to continue improvement and international cooperation in fulfilling our obligation under the Convention. We are confident that this dialogue will be productive and will further strengthen Indonesia's resolve to ensure that every migrant worker can migrate safely, work with dignity, and return to contribute to their communities. The government of Indonesia appreciates this opportunity and look forward to a constructive dialogue with the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rinaldi, and back to you again, Madam Chair.
On behalf of the members of the committee, I'd like to thank His Excellency Ambassador, Head of Delegation, and the Director General, co-head of the delegation, for the introductory remarks. The numerous delegation that we have with us is testimony to your attitude vis-à-vis our committee. You know that the procedure for review before the treaty bodies involves questions that are raised first by country rapporteurs, followed by other members of the committee. The delegation can then answer the questions raised by the country rapporteurs as well as other members of the committee, and if time allows, additional questions will be asked by members of the committee, followed by answers and so on. I'd also like to say that the delegation can ask for a 15-minute break after the first round of questions in order to organise your answers in a room that has been reserved for this purpose. I'd like to draw the delegation's attention to the fact that it's important to carefully manage your time, and I'd encourage you to be very concise in the questions that they ask. And I'd like to invite the country rapporteurs, Ms. Jumur and Mr. Kariwasam, to open the dialogue by asking questions on the implementation of the various provisions of the articles of the Convention by Indonesia. May I begin with Ms. Jumur? You have the floor, madam.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. I would like to use the opportunity to thank delegation of Indonesia to be today with us, and I hope that we'll have a very successful interactive dialogue. Also, there is no doubt that there have been taken measures by authorities of Indonesia to improve situation related to migration and to ensure implementation of relevant provisions of a convention. As all of us are in the same cycle, your country is a member state of the convention. We are experts, and the common goal of all is to improve convention because it is our child. There is no doubt that you understand that our questions is only have intention to see progress and to see how can be a development further organized. Having in mind that Indonesia is a dominantly country of origin, can you provide us with information? Is there any signs that Indonesia become a country of transit or a destination? Also, many countries in which Indonesian migrant workers are employed are not parties to the convention. It was already mentioned bilateral agreements with other states, but please can you provide further information about that agreements, particularly when we are speaking on Arabic countries. Since the last report has been additional ratification of international standards. If yes, which of those international standards have been ratified? Indonesia ratified the UN Transnational Organized Crime Convention with two protocols, Palermo Trafficking Protocol. Please, can you give us information on actions that have been taken to implement Palermo Trafficking Protocol? Can you provide us with information on National Action Plan for Human Rights, if such exists? What are relevant provisions related to migration? In November 2008, there was established National Anti-Trafficking in Persons Task Force. Can you give us information on the result of work this body? What do you see, which progress has been done since body was established? Is the state party adopt comprehensive legislation on migration and take the step necessary to ensure that this legislation, including law number 6/2011 on immigration and draft amendments to the law number 39/2004 on placement and protection of Indonesian overseas workers, are in line with the provision of the convention? I raise that question because some information saying that there are problems related to fishermen, migrants, and enjoyment of their rights. Is the state adopted declaration provided for Article 76 and 77 of Convention, and through that way recognizes competencies of committee to receive individual complaints and state parties complain? One of our recommendations from previous report process was ratification of Convention on Enforced Disappearances. Has been ratified this convention? If not, why? Is there some special reason for that? What measures have been taken to ensure that a gender-responsive and human rights approach integrated in the state strategies and policies related to migrants? We focus on this issue having in mind of migrants population from Indonesia, that female are dominantly present. And on that context, please, can you give us more information on main causes why female are dominantly immigrated from Indonesia? Has been improved coordination among ministries and agencies at all levels of government for the effective implementation of rights protected under the Convention. Several sources again reported that there is still lack of proper and effective coordination among different bodies, stakeholders, and it will be very important to recognize main causes of that. Has been established a centralized comprehensive database. Both heads of delegation mentioned this issue, and there is no doubt that without having proper database collected is very difficult to make proper planning and proper action plan for futures. What is the status of national human rights institution? I know about reaccreditation process, but because in previous status there was question. I know that status A was returned to national human rights institution, but it's not enough to have returned status. It is very important to ensure that status will continue to be in future, and definitely in that context, I would like also to raise question of a national preventive mechanism in accordance of Convention Against Torture. How much is effective that body, and what is results of its work? Do you have systematic education and training on convention, particularly in context of education and training of judiciary and police, those who are directly in contact with migrants, but also who are responsible to make judiciary decisions? Where is civil society in this process? Which measures have been taken to involve civil society in your activities? And how do you have permanent consultations with civil society, and in which way those consultations are going? In which way equal access to effective remedy is provided? Is there any differences of access to justice for migrants regardless of their status? What is status of victims of sexual labor exploitation victims? Which type of assistance they have? Is it only in writing, in law, in bylaws, or does such system exist effectively? And also, when we are speaking on victims, what can you give? How you can explain status of children who are born abroad, if they return to be registered in your registry book? Do you register them as who is parent, mother of child? And is it stigmatization present in that process of registration? And how much is effective that procedure of registry? Can be done in a period of 60 days, or is there some cases when that deadline has not been respected? How does go return process of your migrants from other countries? And also, please provide us more information on migrant visas. I will stop here because I have additional questions, but we have 2 days in front of us, and I'm sure that we will be able to give answers on those questions. And I'm sure that also my colleagues have additional questions. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you, Madam, for your question. And thank you for your preliminary questions. I now give the floor to Mr. Karyawasam. Mr. Karyawasam, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I join my colleagues and Chair in welcoming the delegation of Indonesia. Indonesia has come with a large delegation commensurate with its status in Asia. Indonesia is a very large nation, both in terms of population and the space it occupies with several archipelagos. And also, I welcome the national human rights institutions as well as civil society groups who are here. It's a very welcome sign to show manifest the interest of Indonesia people and its government to uphold the rights of migrant workers. And for this convention, Indonesia is very important, since success of Indonesia in providing all the rights enshrined in the convention will be all success of ours, of this committee. Indonesia can be a model by implementing the conventions to the letter to the extent possible and make the convention more visible and leading to greater participation in the convention by many other countries who have not yet joined this convention regime. In that context, I accept the point made by Ambassador, leader of delegation, that Indonesia, like many other members of this convention, is hamstrung, or rather have an issue with regard not having the many receiving countries part of this convention. Countries of destination where Indonesian migrant workers work, most of them are not part of this, or almost all of them are not part of this convention. So therefore, to that much, we recognize the difficulty in providing all the rights in a manner that will make a difference. But nevertheless, as a prominent nation in Asia, Indonesia has a responsibility to implement this convention to the extent possible, and our dialogue will be conducted in a constructive manner to aid you for that purpose. And in that context, let me first of all mention about our appreciation for your coordination with civil society and national human rights organizations, because given the size and the breadth of the nation of Indonesia, the government itself cannot do this role effectively, although Indonesia has now become a vibrant democracy, and providing the space for the other organization in civil society is a very good welcome sign. And I would like to especially welcome the members who are here from Komnas HM, KPAI, Komnas Perempuan, KND, Yanko HM, and I would of course urge and in fact request the government representatives to work even closer with those organizations so that the end product of your work will be more beneficial for the stakeholders, which means migrant workers. So we would like to know a little more about your plans, the government plans, to enhance the cooperation with civil society organizations and national human rights institutions, with a view to providing them more resources, more leverage, very important, more leverage in terms of implementing the convention, so that the migrant workers get the benefits that they deserve under the convention, and even as a citizens of Indonesia. So any plans you have in that context would be welcome. Let me now go to some specific issues. We recognize Indonesia has quite a large number of embassies, consulates overseas, who are providing facilities for migrant workers of Indonesian origin. And they, I believe, are and understand that they are doing very, very rigorous work. But in that context, do you have survivor centers in those in some of those consulates to help migrant workers who are in trouble? And to explain a little more of how it works, whether you have a gender-sensitive approach in running these centers in countries where there are so many migrant workers who are in trouble, especially in countries where they are not part of this convention. In the same breath, we have been made to understand that there are 173 women in death row in some nations where migrant workers work in substantial numbers. Now, that's a very large number. And of course, we recognize, as I said earlier, there's a difficulty in working with those countries because they are not part of this convention. But still, as the government authorities, what are the efforts you are making in terms of helping those in death row to mitigate their, to enable to obtain pardons? Because in our view, migrant worker in a death row is a very tragic situation. So what are the measures that government takes in terms of mitigating the situation? We understand that there are social security issues, that some Indonesian migrant workers, they have social security that they have earned in countries that they work, but they are not portable and have not been made portable, and what efforts the government is taking to make them portable. It is tough, but there should be a means of engaging in bilateral agreements so that you can make those things portable. Another issue that is happening recently in Southeast Asia is cyber scamming centers in several South Asian countries. Some countries, I don't think those countries are part of this convention either. And Indonesian migrant workers are in trouble in those places. We would like more details with regard to how you are handling that situation and what efforts you have taken to help those migrant workers from your government side, and also working with groups like ASEAN, so that such situations would not arise in the future. Indonesia, of course, is vastly becoming a country of, it used to be a country of origin only, now it is becoming a country of transit and destination. And one particular group that is perhaps is a manifestation of this trend is Rohingya refugees. We would like to know more about how you handle this group, because it's an unfortunate group of people who is leaving Myanmar and Bangladesh under tragic circumstances. What are the measures you are taking to assist them? Although they may be refugees, ultimately they become migrant workers. We would like to treat them as migrant workers. What are the measures you have taken to assist them in line with the convention? We have also understand about the recruitment agencies. Recruitment agencies in any migrant destination, migrant origin country is a difficult issue to handle, because they work in the market according to market conditions, whereas we want to approach the rights of migrant workers on a rights-based approach. So right-based approach versus market forces, there's a natural clash. But we need to look at recruitment agencies purely on the basis of rules and regulations you have established, and how far you have been able to monitor and regulate those agencies, and to give us more information of the number of successes you have had in terms of preventing trafficking and overcharging and placing migrant workers in dangerous and unsustainable professions, and so on and so forth. So you have agencies that monitor them. Little more information about how you handle them, detailed information, we would welcome that. On the same line, Indonesia is a very large country, as I mentioned. So there is an issue with regard to institutional coordination. So can you explain? You have many agencies that are in fact assigned the task of enhancing the rights of migrant workers, but in terms of implementation, how is the coordinated mechanism works? Do you have regular inter-ministerial, inter-agency meetings? And where is the ultimate responsibility lies on each and every aspect of the migration process? So more information about this coordination between the government institutions and between government institutions and the civil society organizations. Having good regulations, having enough institutions is not enough unless your coordination is happening. So while we urge you to have better coordination, from your side, we would expect you to give us more details what you would be doing. Now, we recognize 70% of the migrant workers in Indonesia are women. And that's one of the largest numbers. I think that such large numbers are in Asia, only in Sri Lanka and Indonesia, where larger number are female workers. Now that, of course, brings a challenge to the authorities to be gender sensitive, to be specific in to ensure that there is no sexual harassment, there is no trafficking, there is no gender-based discrimination, and there is the rights of the migrant female mothers. Some of them may be in irregular situations are upheld, whether you are irregular or regular. When you become a mother, you are a mother and a child, and the mother and the child have same rights as any other human. And what are the measures you have taken to ensure that the mother, often with only mother and child, their birth registration process, their rights are ensured, and just having good regulations on the book is not enough, because we know that you have a good regulation to take care of them, but how are they implemented at the ground level? Who is monitoring the implementation so that there is no discrimination against females, who are the bulk of the migrant workers, whom you mentioned very rightly, Ambassador, the amount of funds that they bring back to country, and the country owes back to them that service. So I would like to hear more about your plans on implementing the rights regime in a gender-sensitive and gender non-discriminatory manner. So I will, before I stop, there are other issues that I will come back. But one issue that I want to again mention is, it was mentioned earlier also, fishers, those who are in fishing vessels, they are often victims of indirectly trafficking because they don't get the right facilities, they don't get visas in the countries that they are working with fishing vessels. So as a result, they are becoming often stranded in countries without rights. What are the efforts you have taken to handle that phenomenon? Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur.
Thank you very much, Mr. Karyagawa-san. The co-rapporteur, thank you. Thank you for those questions and comments, introductory comments and questions. I will now give the floor to the other experts for questions. We will begin with Mr. Pablo Seriani, followed by Mr. Yes, thank you. And good morning to one and all in the Republic of India. A couple more questions to those asked by my colleagues. First, there's the law on migration of 2011. In 2017, this committee offered recommendations to the state regarding the modification of the 2011 legislation on migrants in Indonesia, and in particular on the need to reform numerous articles that had set forth jail time for irregular entry, irregular stay, and also migratory detention during the processing of deportation. I would like to ask what measures you've implemented to address this. As I understand, the legislation is still in force despite the recommendations from the committee. I'd like to know whether measures or initiatives have been put forth to address these recommendations in the legislature, to address those articles from 2011 and to bring them into step with that set forth in the convention, particularly as regards the non-criminalization of entry into or irregular entry into or stay in Indonesia, and without a doubt also the issue of not moving ahead with detention, prolonged detention as established in Article 85 during deportation proceedings. So what measures have you implemented to address these matters? And meanwhile, while reforms have not been made, what measures have been applied right now to address these issues? Now, on the issue of detention, I have taken another report of the guidelines from 2024 that are tied to the centers of detention. Perhaps I could ask for more information on this. You mentioned in these paragraphs of the report that there are places that are not places of deprivation of liberty, such as housing complexes, hotels, apartments, etc., that are used for this purpose. So perhaps you could tell us more, to what degree are people being sent to detention centers, such as the 13 centers mentioned in the report, or are they going to these other places that you've mentioned, these alternative centers, alternatives to the deprivation of liberty? Perhaps you should have statistics on that or information on the degree to which new guidelines are bringing change to this specific item. Now, expulsion or deportation of migrants. In paragraph 133 of the report refers to a guideline from 2023. And that sets forth, among other things, the administrative remedies or appeals when there is a deportation order. That is to say, appeals to the deportation immigration authorities. So I guess the question is whether they can appeal to the justice system after the migration authorities declare a deportation or choose deportation, if there are judicial remedies. Now, also, there's data on deportation. I think there are more than 20,000 over the past years. It's not broken down by nationality or cause for deportation. The reason for and why is there not a breakdown of the data? Also, concrete questions as to whether you are planning to ratify the Geneva Convention on the Statute of Refugees and the protocol from 51 and 67. We take note of domestic legislation in Indonesia on refugees, but we're wondering whether there are plans to ratify the Geneva Convention and the protocol and the ILO Convention 189 on domestic workers as well. I read some reports indicating that it is thought that Indonesian migrant workers in other countries, some 47% of them, are in irregular migratory status abroad. I'm not sure whether you have different data, but it would be helpful to know what data your data points at on these individuals and what the state is doing, on the one hand, to help prevent that your migrants are in an irregular situation, and also to facilitate Indonesian workers abroad leaving behind this irregular status, moving beyond it. As you know, irregular status can lead to exploitation or precarious employment scenarios, etc. So part of the policy for of protecting them abroad might include effective measures so that these individuals can move beyond irregular migratory status in Japan or Malaysia or other countries in which they might find themselves. What are the measures, the consular protection measures in place for Indonesians as well, migrant workers, should they find themselves in processes of detention or expulsion in Malaysia, in detention centers in Malaysia, for example, to what degree they have access to legal support or other types of support? For example, again, those that are detained because of their irregular migratory status in other countries. Now, children of migrant workers, Indonesian migrant workers, also in countries, in third-party countries. Perhaps you could provide additional information on the Indonesian policies that aim at supporting these children and meeting the needs of these children beyond merely the responsibility that those states have in the countries in which they find themselves. That is, say, the right to education and health for those children that are in, for example, again, Malaysia or other countries. Those states have responsibilities vis-a-vis these children through, for example, the Convention on the Rights of the Child and other conventions that they've signed on to. But what is Indonesia doing also to provide support for them, particularly as regards access to education? I've read that there are, and I'm not sure whether the information is correct or not, but I read that there are overseas Indonesian schools, policies of guaranteeing access to education through these schools, Indonesian schools in these countries for children that are for children of Indonesian workers. And who can have access to these schools? Is it just some children of Indonesian workers, or is it all children of Indonesian workers? Perhaps you could provide more information on that. Now, the issue of xenophobia and racism against migrants, I would like to know, if I might, what measures or programs you have in two directions. For example, to protect migrants in Indonesia that might find themselves facing xenophobia or racism. For example, Chinese migrants in Indonesia, but then also what measures are you providing for Indonesian migrant workers abroad when they face xenophobia or racism in the countries in which they find themselves? For example, recently, in the context of national elections in Japan, or situations marked by xenophobia for the Indonesian population in these countries when they face xenophobia and politicization during electoral periods as well.
So what measures through bilateral dialogue or consular assistance are being envisaged so that Indonesians do not suffer from xenophobic attitudes in the countries they find themselves in? And then finally, I'd like to know that that occurred in the country they were working in, and they returned to Indonesia. And I'm wondering what you're doing to facilitate their integration into society for people who return to Indonesia with some kind of disability. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pablo Siriani. Mr. Babacar, please. Madam Chair, I would echo my colleagues in extending a warm welcome to the Indonesian delegation. Your presence here in number demonstrates your commitment to our convention. I have a few questions connected to the implementation, which is not where workers work abroad is we imagine that Indonesia has taken measures to protect Indonesians who go to work abroad or migrants who are in transit. As one of the rapporteurs mentioned, there may be people who want to set up their lives in Indonesia and need some protection. Now, I've looked at the ILO conventions that Indonesia is not yet party to. And my question's really to know whether Indonesia is intending and ratifying these conventions and implementing them. I'm referring to Convention 129 on labour inspection and Protocol 421. I know that Indonesia has ratified 421, but not the protocol. I'm wondering if Indonesia is intending and ratifying these instruments. And while I'm at it, I'd like to ask a question about labour inspection. I wonder if you could tell me how many labour inspectors there are in Indonesia, how they are distributed geographically,